man.
Thank you.
Hey, Anthony, I've got like 10 minutes left. I don't want to take over your whole show, but can I ask one more question?
100%, dude.
Because I think this is important. I'm a convert to the faith, and I didn't know until a year ago.
From what? From what?
Basically nothing. I wasn't baptized, but I did a Baptist homeschool curriculum, so I was most closely associated with the Baptist faith, even though my family didn't go to church.
How
next time I'm on, I want to tell you the whole story because I never thought of my conversion story as particularly interesting. But as I told it to more and more people, they're like, "That's insane! I've never heard of anybody that did that." Because
let's see.
Can we set that up? Can I have you on and actually talk about your? I would love to do that. Yeah,
for sure. Go ahead, the long and short of it is that my siblings all converted without my parents. We were all very young, and my older sister was 16. We had been part of a Catholic homeschool group, and she, over the years, she was reading about it, talking to her friends, and she went to my parents and said, I want to be baptized. I want to be Catholic. And my sister led all of us, 5 of us, into the church without my parents. So, there's more to the story, but that's kind of the interesting point is that, I'm like a 12-year-old kid at the time studying about the faith and being led by a friend of ours. We didn't do RCIA, luckily, or I probably wouldn't be Catholic anymore. And we did it without our parents.
Horror stories about my wife's RCIA experience.
Oh, I used to help with RCIA.
My wife went through RCIA. It was horrific. So
even at a good parish, it's rough.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but so this question to me hits home because it's like you could tie it into the traditional liturgy, but it also makes. I mean, this whole show, I think your whole, so you think the faith show, I think makes people think a lot about the important things in our faith and what we know and what we don't know, and not in a way that makes you feel bad, but in a way that makes you want to learn more.
Oh, it's exciting.
And this, I think, is the perfect example of that. And there's kind of a long answer and a short answer, so I'll accept a couple different things. Why do we call our Sunday worship Mass? Every Catholic knows that on Sunday you go to Mass.
Yeah, it's not called that in the East. It's not called that in the East. In the East, it's the Divine Liturgy. And if you go to an Eastern Catholic parish, which I have, and if you say Mass, they'll say, no, it's the Divine Liturgy. So why is it called the Mass?
That's right. Yeah, it's a tricky question. And like I said, I mean, I'm a convert. I was very zealous for the faith when I converted. I've always loved reading about the faith. And this is something I didn't come across until pretty recently.
I don't know the answer. Why do we call it
real
the Mass?
Quick? Are you guys all Roman? Are you guys all Roman, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I assume that most of you were raised in the Novus Ordo, right? I don't know.
I was raised. We start the show off with a corny Novus Ordo song every time to remind us of what our roots are and how far we've come.
Hey, we've got a section in episode 2 where we show corny Novus Ordo songs and next to the thing they were taken from. So a lot of Novus Ordo songs were taken from like movie soundtracks and stuff, and people don't know that. So we have this really awesome section in the film where we play a song and you're like, oh yeah, I've heard that in church. And then it switches to like Titanic and you're like, whoa, that's the tune from Willy Wonka. Are you kidding me?
I'm so excited for this second episode.
So the reason I asked that about the Novus Ordo is if you grew up in the Novus Ordo, A, you would have no idea why it was called the Mass. And B, there'd be really no reason to call it that because this word doesn't appear anywhere in the Novus Ordo Mass.
Yeah.
Even though it's called the Novus Ordo Missae. All right. So who do we got? Do we have people in the chat? It's kind of a long thing to type out.
So I had, let me see. Let me see what I got.
I didn't buzz in first here, but I did beat
Tobias
Rob. I just want to say that.
Thanks, Jason.
So Tobias is right, but I wouldn't give him full credit because
that doesn't explain the answer. So
in the Old Mass, there's a point where the priest says "Ite missa est," right, and that is where Mass comes from. But what does that what does that mean? Why do we call it that?
It's the same word missile comes from.
Yeah. So does anybody want to take
I'm so happy you're coming on and giving this question. What a great question.
Is it because they're sending us out into the world?
Sending forth.
All right. So Missa means a sending away or a dismissal. So there's a part in the Mass where the priest says, Ite missa est. It is the dismissal. But that's not the end of Mass. It's actually a little more than middle of the way through Mass. And so you think, why is he dismissing us? And the most common answer is you're being sent out into the world. You've received the grace of Christ. Now go spread it. While the symbolism there is powerful, that's actually not why. It used to be that the Mass was divided into the Mass of the catechumens and the Mass of the faithful. And the catechumens were not allowed to be present during the consecration and the reception of Holy Communion.
Yeah, because we wanted to keep our mystery sacred and private.
That's right. So when the priest turns around and says, Ite missa est, it is the dismissal, the catechumens actually get up and leave. And the Greek fathers used to call Mass Eucharist, which is what we call, the sacrament. But as the Mass began to Latinize in the 200s and 300s, it was kind of almost like a slang term, right? The catechumens would be like, the Missa, right? Because they can only stay until the Missa. So in a way, it was not derogatory, but kind of slang, the Missa, and it just stuck.
Amazing.
It just stuck.
This is amazing. So you're saying, the catechumens would have to leave at the end of the catechumen section. Yeah. And it was almost like, you guys got to bounce. Mass time.
It's the Missa,
go.
Mass time, yeah.
Dude, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's kind of a hard trivia question because it takes a lot of explaining. But I mean, I think technically the Tobias said because of the Ite missa est. I mean, that's correct. It's just that it requires.
Yeah, but it doesn't give the explanation behind how it started. So
yeah, but I'm glad that you guys said that about being sent out into the world, because that's kind of the common, if you hear a priest preach about this, which would be rare, that's probably what he's going to say. But it's actually another kind of modern misconception about it.
Yeah, Tobias says that's why Jake is doing the liturgy. So, Jake, I know you got to bounce. I would love to get you on. Just maybe me, you, and Rob, because me and if Joe, if you want to join us too, man, I'd love to get you on. Just talk.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, maybe
I'll shoot you a DM. We'll talk about it, and we'll set that up, man. That'd be awesome.
Maybe if you're lucky, we can get Cameron on too.
I'm open for that, of course, but I'd be happy. Would
you be open to pre-recording something?
100%, absolutely.
Okay, because if we do that, it's I have hours. What time zone are you in? You're in New York, so you're Eastern. Yeah. I'm Eastern too. I've got some hours in the morning and then early afternoon that are pretty easy. When do you normally, get off work and all?
My regular work schedule is kind of crazy, but there might be a day next week that I might be able to pull something off. We'll talk on the side. If we have to pre-record whenever we do it, I'm fine with that. I'd even take a day off of work if it meant getting you and Cameron on together and really talking about liturgy film. I'd pull that off.
Yeah. Can I give a quick plug before I go?
100%, man. This show's yours.
Yeah, I like that I came on here and just took over. You're a very gracious host. So Mass Ages is a documentary trilogy about the Latin Mass, as you can probably tell from what we're talking about. Episode 1 was released last year, and praise God, we've received over 1 million views on it. And it's kind of blown up and gone crazy. And we're so excited. We have priests reaching out saying, how do I learn this Mass? We have people reaching out who say, I finally found a parish. I drive 2 hours every Sunday because of this film. I've had Muslims reach out to me and say, I'm really inspired by the beauty of this Mass. Lots of Protestants. So the effect that this film has had through God's grace has just been remarkable. And we're getting ready to release the second episode. Episode 1 was kind of an introduction to the Latin Mass.
I wept during episode 1, just so you know. It was such a moving experience for me.
Every Catholic should see this film. I mean, I don't care if you're somebody, you don't even go to the Latin Mass and you're not even curious about it. You've never really cared that much. You should still watch this film. This is probably the most Catholic film I've seen probably in my life. It captured so much of, I think, what the rest of us have been feeling for a long time.
And on top of that, my children. So when I'm going to let you finish your plug, but when episode 1 came out, I made my whole family sit together. My children, my wife, everyone. My kids were like, "Oh, we have to watch another Catholic thing, Dad." At the end of the episode, my children said to me, they said, "Dad, that was such an amazing documentary. Like, we thought we were going to be sitting through something boring." My children loved it. So,
well, look, I'm not a filmmaker by trade. I got involved with Cameron because of a different skill set of mine. So I was the first one to say to Cameron, I was like, look, I don't want to make a sappy, low budget Christian film that's going to sit on YouTube and get 100 views, and it's just the 100 people that already go to Latin Mass, right? That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in powerful story, something that can change hearts and minds. And the way Cameron describes it is, we don't want to pull punches, right? We don't want to just kind of not give people the meat, but we also don't want to take cheap shots. I mean, YouTube, traditional Catholic YouTube is just full of guys on webcams just taking cheap shots and clickbait and all of that. Yeah. And we want to find that middle ground. We don't want to pull punches and we don't want to throw cheap shots, right? So episode 1 was kind of this surprising storytelling. You know, it's not a bunch of like college professors sitting around telling the audience why the Latin Mass is so great. It's a very emotional story about a widow and her kids and how they lost their husband and how the Latin Mass community got them through that. Intertwined with some information about the Mass. Episode 2, though, is gonna really shock people, I think, because if you're like me, if you're like the rest of us, you grew up going to Novus Ordo Mass, maybe you've never heard of Latin Mass. Probably the most common thing is that you've heard of it, but you think it's just regular Mass in Latin, which is what I thought for years, right? Yep. And I think episode 2 is going to shock people because it's a deep dive into how the new Mass was created. And a lot of people think, oh, you're criticizing the new Mass. That means you're criticizing Vatican II because Vatican II created the new Mass. Well, that's a misconception. The new Mass was created 5 years after the close of Vatican II. So we dive into all of that, but we keep our same storytelling, winsome approach. And guys, I can say this because I'm not the one who edited it and who shot the film. It's beautiful. This isn't some guy with a webcam or some guy making a movie on his iPhone. Like, our cinematographer is an Emmy-nominated cinematographer. He works for National Geographic. He's worked for everybody. Like, this is the real deal, and we're super excited about it. Episode 2 premieres on our YouTube channel on May 26th, 8 Eastern, I think. It's about an hour long, so it's not going to take too much of your time, and it's well worth a watch. It's surprising. It's surprising to people who attend the TLM. They may not know all the information here. It's funny when we premiered it in Chicago, we were like, are these jokes going to land? Because it's kind of weird to stick jokes in a movie about the Latin Mass, but it's funny, it's winsome, it's emotional, and we're just so pumped to share it. Thank you for having me on, for letting me give this plug.
After this show's over today, Joe and I are going to reach out to you and we're going to figure out how we can get this thing in New York. I want this thing. I want to see episode 1 and episode 2 right after.
It's funny because when we were scheduling this, I told Cameron, I said, it might be hard to do episode 1 and 2 together and then the Q&A. Like, it's kind of a long night. But when I sat there and watched on the screen, watched episode 1 and back to back with episode 2, it's super powerful. You could almost have them run together and be one,
I wanted to throw something at the screen when episode 1 ended.
Dude, the cliffhanger
at the end of episode 1. I was so angry.
I can say this because I've said this in front of Cameron, so it's not talking bad about him. When we did our team draft of episode 1, I was like, dude, it has to be longer. And he was like, no, people want a short documentary or whatever. And then it comes out, and I probably had, 6,000 emails that were like, only 40 minutes? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's called Mass of the Ages. You could see episode 1 on YouTube right now for free. Episode 2 is coming out May 26th, you said?
That's right, May 26th. Episode 2 is titled A Perfect Storm, and if you've seen episode 1, you know why it's titled that. We're kind of
TJ, go watch episode 1. I promise you will not be disappointed.
Mass Ages. We're going to continue offering stuff for free. We've got a lot of really generous donors, but we're dedicated to paying people, to making high quality films, and not backing down. So we're super excited about it. I think episode 2 is going to be might be a little more controversial than episode 1, but I think people are going to like it.
Jake, I think it's one of the most important. I think it's one of the most important apostolates that's going on right now. Please don't stop doing what y'all are doing. 50 years after Vatican II, people deserve to know what happened.
And I think they deserve to know. I think they deserve to know in a realistic way that doesn't sugarcoat it, but also in a way that's not just like I said, taking cheap shots at
no. But what was stolen from us? Our inheritance was taken from us. We lost our inheritance. So
a lot of people feel that way. Like when they discover this, they're going, well, I want that prayer said at my Mass. I want that blessing at my kid's baptism. What happened to this? And those are valid questions. You're not questioning the authority of the church when you say what happened here. And so we're just bringing that to light for people. The other thing I'm excited about, we've got a lot of bishops on board. We've interviewed,
awesome.
I think, 4 bishops, and we've got Archbishop Corteleone kind of waiting in the wings. He's going to come to our San Francisco premiere. Bishop Strickland will be at our Dallas premiere. Bishop Schneider gave us an interview. Bishop Athanasius Schneider, Bishop Conley, Bishop Bruskowitz. So I think we're up to 5.
So
We're
you're actually throwing some names out there when I used to hear. So Schneider, everybody knows. Strickland, everybody knows. Corteleone, everybody knows. But then you're throwing some new names out there that I didn't.
So Conley's
Lincoln.
Conley's the Diocese of Lincoln, and Bruskowitz is actually Bishop Emeritus of Lincoln. So Conley succeeded him. But Bruskowitz is interesting because he brought Scott Hahn into the faith, and he kind of shepherded. You know, Scott Hahn was brought in the 80s, like right at the height of the JP2 pontificate, very Novus Ordo. And Bruskowitz was kind of planting the bug in Scott Hahn, and now Scott Hahn's a big Latin Mass guy.
Well, you want to know something? I mean, I don't know about you guys. If it wasn't for Scott Hahn and the Protestant converts of the 80s and 90s, I wouldn't be the Catholic I am today. Those guys, I mean, you will never hear me have anything but heaps of praises for Scott Hahn. I've seen him live a dozen times.
He just has a knack for, he steps around it. He never steps in it. Like he just says the right thing every time.
Oh, he set my heart on fire for scripture in a way nobody else ever could.
I'm not going to name names because it's still out there on Twitter, and I don't want to talk bad about this guy, even though he really hates our project and makes that known. But I had somebody accuse us of only inviting radical Catholics to be a part of this film. Okay, Scott Hahn was the second person to give us an interview. He was on board. It went Eric Sammons first, and then Scott Hahn and Peter Kreeft were second and third. Right, so those are Peter Kreeft and Scott Hahn are some mainstream Catholic names. And I was arguing.
Yeah, Scott was very careful in his interview with you guys. I watched it. He was very careful. He said, "Look, I'm a glad trad." He was not knocking the Novus Ordo in any way. He said he probably wouldn't have converted without the Novus Ordo, but he was absolutely talking about the beauty of the ancient liturgy.
You know, this guy who's arguing with me, I said, you know, we didn't just invite like radical Catholics, radical traditionalists to be a part of this. Like we have Scott Hahn and Peter Kreeft on board. And he said, those are 2 of the most radical Catholics I know. And I said, you better be careful because Scott Hahn and Peter Kreeft together are probably responsible for more conversions than anybody who's lived since maybe Bishop Sheen, and maybe even more than Bishop Sheen. And he's going to be a saint one day. So, I mean, Scott Hahn and Peter Kreeft are the real deal, and we were so thrilled to get them on board. It really
those 2 guys had such a big part in my conversion. I couldn't even tell you. Yeah,
like, it's kind of like if you start to do the Catholic family tree. I mean, how many of us can trace some part of our conversion or our family's conversion back to one of those 2 guys? I mean, they're just unbelievable. I think I saw the other day that Scott Hahn's written like 130 books. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
I don't doubt it.
And they're all bestsellers too. It's not like he's just putting books out there for the sake of it. Like
if anybody's interested, the greatest Scott Hahn talk I ever heard, you have to go on the St. Paul what's his website? The
St. Paul Center.
St. Paul Center website. You have to log in and like create an account. He has a biblical study series that he did with priests, and there's one that he does on the Danielic mystery in the book of Ephesians. That I'm not kidding. It is the greatest Bible study I've ever done in my life. I'm doing a video on it soon because I've never heard anybody else talk about it, and it was what lit my heart on fire for the church itself. Like realizing that the church is the fulfillment of the gospel for us is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is the gospel.
Yeah, St. Augustine said, you know, the Bible has supreme authority, but I only believe it has supreme authority because it was the church that gave it supreme authority, right? The church came first.
So, Jake, thank you so much for coming on, man. I'm going to reach out to you, and we're going to set up an interview, and I would love to just hear your conversion story, how you know Cameron, how you got involved in this project. There's so many things I want to talk to you about. We're running really long, so we're going to do a few more trivia questions after we let you off. We'll pick a winner in the chat, and we'll wrap it up for tonight. Dude, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah,
thanks,
anytime.
Jake. Enjoyed it.
Take care, Jake.
Yeah, take care, guys. See ya.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. So we're going to